Imagine being 14 years old and having America fall in love with you. Your face on every magazine, your smile defining innocence itself. Everyone wanting to be you, to look like you, to have your perfect life. Now imagine that behind that smile, you're starving yourself to death, that a man you trusted destroyed your childhood, that your own mother sold you like a product. That's Sandra Dee. And by the time America realized the girl next door was dying inside, it was already too late. April 23rd, 1942, in Bayonne, New Jersey. Alexandra Cyrene Zuck was born. But let's stop right there, because what you don't know yet, what nobody knew for decades, is that Alexandra's childhood was stolen before it even began. Her father left when she was a baby. Her mother Mary remarried a man named Eugene Douvan, and Eugene did something that would shatter Alexandra forever. But we'll come back to that. First, you need to understand how a broken little girl became America's sweetheart. Mary Zuck was ambitious, looked at her beautiful daughter and saw dollar signs. At age 4 years old, Alexandra was modeling. Child model agencies, print ads, catalogues. By age 8, she was the face of products across America. Cute, blonde, angelic. The perfect, wholesome child. Mary controlled everything. What she ate, what she wore, who she talked to, how she smiled. Alexandra wasn't a daughter, she was an investment. A product to be managed and monetized. But here's the truly shocking part. While Alexandra was becoming this perfect image of American girlhood, Eugene Douvan was destroying that innocence behind closed doors. The stepfather, or the man who was supposed to protect her. For years he abused her, touched her, violated her trust in ways that would haunt her for the rest of her life. And Mary? She either didn't know or didn't want to know, because the money kept coming in, and that's what mattered. By age 12, Alexandra was transitioning from child model to teenage actress. Hollywood noticed. In 1957, at just 15 years old, she was cast in Until They Sail, alongside major stars. The studio executives looked at this blonde teenager and made a decision. Alexandra Zuck wasn't a star name. They needed something all-American, something wholesome, something that screamed innocence. They gave her Sandra Dee. And just like that, Alexandra Zuck, the abused, controlled, traumatized child, disappeared. Sandra Dee, America's perfect girl, was born. And this is where everything changed. 1959. 3 films that made Sandra Dee a household name. Gidget in April, playing a perky teenage surfer girl, the role that defined her career. Then, A Summer Place in November, a romantic drama that made teenage girls swoon. Then, Imitation of Life, also in November. Douglas Sirk's melodrama. All in 1 year. Sandra Dee was everywhere. Magazine covers, fan mail by the thousands, teenagers wanting her hair, her smile, her life. At 17 years old, she was one of the biggest stars in Hollywood. The wholesome girl next door everyone loved. But nobody saw what was happening. The control was absolute. Mary managed every aspect of Sandra's life. What she ate, almost nothing. How much she weighed, less and less. Who she dated, nobody without approval. What roles she took, only innocent ones. Or Sandra was developing anorexia nervosa, though nobody called it that in 1959. She was just watching her figure for the cameras, eating less, then almost nothing. Her body was disappearing, but her smile stayed perfect. That's what Mary cared about, the smile, not the girl behind it. But you haven't seen the biggest surprise yet. In 1960, Sandra met Bobby Darin, singer, performer, cocky, charismatic, talented. He was 24, she was 18. He was everything Mary disapproved of. Italian-American, working-class background, rebellious. But Sandra was mesmerized. For the first time in her life, someone saw her as more than a product. Bobby pursued her aggressively. They married in December 1960. Sandra thought she was escaping Mary's control. She had no idea she was walking into something worse. Bobby Darin was brilliant and cruel in equal measure. He loved Sandra, genuinely, but he also needed to dominate her completely. And Sandra, who'd never been allowed to think for herself, who'd been controlled her entire life, simply shifted from Mary's control to Bobby's. He made decisions for her, criticized her constantly. Her career, her looks, her intelligence. She wasn't sophisticated enough for his friends, wasn't smart enough for his conversations, wasn't talented enough for serious roles. And Sandra, starving herself, traumatized from childhood abuse, desperate for love and approval, believed every word. They had a son, Dodd Darin, in 1961. Sandra was 19 years old, already a mother, already a wife, already losing herself completely. But the real drama was only beginning. Through the early 1960s, Sandra kept making films. I'm Tammy, Tell Me True, Romanoff and Juliet, more wholesome girl-next-door roles. But Hollywood was changing. The 1960s counterculture was rising. The innocent beach movies were becoming dated. Sandra was typecast so completely that nobody would consider her for dramatic roles. She wanted to grow as an actress, to prove she was more than Gidget. But the image was too strong. She was trapped inside Sandra Dee, unable to escape. And her marriage was collapsing. Bobby's career was exploding, hit records, Vegas shows, movie roles. He was Bobby Darin, the star. Sandra was becoming Bobby Darin's wife, her own career fading. And Bobby resented her for that, resented that her innocence, her image, limited what he could do publicly. He wanted a sophisticated partner for Hollywood parties. Sandra was still America's teenager. The arguments got worse. The cruelty intensified, and Sandra's anorexia got worse. Control. That's what it was about. She couldn't control her childhood, her mother, her husband, her career, but she could control what went into her body. And so, she ate less and disappeared. Wait, don't miss this detail. In 1966, Sandra finally told Bobby about Eugene Douvan, about the abuse, about what her stepfather did to her as a child. And Bobby's response wasn't comfort. It was anger, that she'd kept it from him, that she was damaged, that this explained why she was difficult. The man she thought would save her couldn't handle her truth. The marriage was over emotionally. Legally, they divorced in 1967. Sandra was 25 years old, already a has-been in Hollywood terms, a single mother, anorexic, and completely shattered. And the 1970s were a slow-motion collapse. Sandra made a few films, mostly forgettable. Her anorexia was public knowledge now, tabloids writing about her weight, her appearance, her problems. In 1973, Bobby Darin died suddenly during heart surgery. He was only 37, and Sandra, despite the divorce, despite everything, was devastated. The man who'd hurt her was also the only man she'd ever loved. And now, he was gone. She turned to alcohol, started drinking heavily to numb the pain, the memories, the failure of her life. Her career was essentially over by the mid-1970s. The roles dried up completely. She did some TV movies, some dinner theatre, but Sandra Dee, the brand, the image, was finished. America had moved on. The wholesome girl next door was a relic of a different era. And the woman behind that image was drowning. While what you're seeing now is nothing compared to this. In 1978, something happened that would define how a new generation saw Sandra Dee. The movie Grease came out. And there's a song, Look at Me, I'm Sandra Dee, where Rizzo mocks the Sandra Dee image as outdated, prudish, ridiculous. The character became a joke, a punchline, the symbol of everything the sexual revolution had rejected. And Sandra, she heard it, saw teenagers laughing at her, at what she represented, at the image that had destroyed her life. The cruelest irony, Sandra Dee had never been that girl. She'd been sexually abused, controlled, traumatized. But to the world, she was just a joke about virginity and innocence. The 1980s and 1990s were quiet years. Sandra essentially disappeared from public life, lived alone, battled alcoholism and anorexia. I struggled with depression. Her son Dodd tried to maintain a relationship, but Sandra was difficult, bitter, angry, isolated. She'd sued her mother Mary in the 1980s over financial mismanagement, revealing that Mary had stolen or squandered most of Sandra's earnings. The mother who'd sold her daughter's childhood had also stolen her money. Her health deteriorated. Decades of anorexia and alcoholism destroyed her body. Kidney problems, throat cancer from smoking, weakened immune system. In the early 2000s, Sandra was in and out of hospitals. On February 20th, 2005, at her home in Thousand Oaks, California, Sandra Dee died from complications related to kidney disease. She was 62 years old. Dodd was with her. The world barely noticed. A small obituary. A few retrospectives about her 1950s films. And then silence. You won't believe this, but after her death, the truth finally came out. Dodd Darin wrote a book. Friends gave interviews, and the picture became clear. Sandra Dee had been one of Hollywood's earliest visible anorexia cases. The sexual abuse by her stepfather had destroyed her ability to trust, to feel safe in her own body. Mary's control had made her a product instead of a person. Bobby Darin's cruelty had finished the job Mary started. And America. America had loved the image so much, they never bothered to ask if the girl behind it was okay. Today, Sandra Dee is still a name people know, but mostly as that Grease song, the joke about innocence. Few people remember she was a real person. Fewer still know she was a victim of abuse, of exploitation, of an industry that built her up and threw her away. Watch her in Gidget or A Summer Place now, unknowing what we know, and you see something heartbreaking. That smile isn't innocence. It's survival. It's a child who learned to perform happiness so well that nobody noticed she was dying inside. Some stars burn out. Some fade away. Sandra Dee was extinguished, slowly, methodically, by every person who was supposed to protect her. And by the time anyone noticed, there was nothing left but the image. The wholesome girl next door who wasn't wholesome, who wasn't a girl, who had no door to hide behind. Just Alexandra Zuck from Bayonne, who wanted to be loved for who she was, not what she could pretend to be. And nobody ever gave her that chance. An empty movie set, a 1950s beach scene, surfboards, bright sun, cheerful music playing softly in the distance. A yellow Gidget surfboard leans against a wall, and beside it, or small and easy to miss, a framed photo of a little girl, not Sandra Dee, the star. Alexandra Zuck, age 4, in a modelling shoot, looking directly at the camera with eyes that already know too much. And if you look closely, you can see it. The performance already starting, the real girl already disappearing. Some people become famous. Sandra Dee was erased by fame. And the tragedy is that she was complicit in her own erasure, because she'd been taught from birth that being Alexandra wasn't enough. You had to be Sandra Dee, even if it killed you. And it did. So how do you remember Sandra Dee. As America's wholesome sweetheart from those innocent beach movies, or as Alexandra Zuck, the abused, controlled, exploited child who never escaped the image that destroyed her? Share with us in the comments. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss another journey through Hollywood's most heartbreaking true stories.